You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. I'm here in the studio, and Stephen is all cosy at home because he's not feeling very well. How are you at the moment?
Yeah, well, if I'm perfectly honest, Anne, I feel like death warmed up.
Oh.
But I am very pleased. When I spoke to the boss yesterday and said, can we do it this way? Not because I didn't want to come in, actually, but because I didn't want to infect you. Because I'd be sat next to you for 4 hours. I thought that'd be, I know you're not feeling brilliant, but it would make you even worse, wouldn't it?
No,
so,
I think
you said this would work.
Yeah, because you had it about 2-3 weeks ago, and then I think you gave it to me because I had it all over Christmas, and I think I might have given it back to you or something. But it's good, or frankly, it's never left you. You work too hard. That's what it is.
Oh, is that what it is? All right. Well, look. Although we want you to get in touch if you're feeling rotten, how are you dealing with it? What are you doing? GBViews to gbnews.uk. I've got to say the views this morning, Anne, have got a certain subject, quite rightly so. Gary says, hi, Stephen and Anne. Congratulations, Anne, on your OBE. Same from Jane this morning. Rose says, congratulations, Anne, on your OBE. So well deserved.
Oh,
lovely to see us both back on our screens. That's very nice of you. And a nice one from Karen, who says, just wanted to say how thrilled I am about Anne's honour, which is so long overdue. To go through the experience of losing a child and still endeavour to help other people from suffering the same trauma is heroic. Huge congratulations, Anne. And I think a lot of people are going to reflect that, Anne. And as you were saying before, it's, it's a long time ago that all this happened. But when we were talking to Mike, your ex-husband, when he came on the show a couple of weeks ago, I mean, it's so obvious just how this, obviously, it never leaves you. It never leaves either of you, does it? And no doubt affects your other boys as well. And but you did so much good out of that, and saved so many lives, actually. I don't know what the figures are now, but they were saying hundreds of lives saved from that.
They said, I spoke to the professor yesterday. Yeah, I spoke to the professor yesterday who helped me so much with the campaign. Well, it was all his work that I based it on. And he said the latest figures, conservatively spoken in his university hospital, is that it was 25,000 lives, which is terrific. It's Sebastian's legacy, isn't it?
It is.
Great. No, thank you to everybody getting in touch. It's really nice to hear from people. But we've got lots of other things to talk about. Shall we go through the papers? Let's have a look at the front pages. The Sun is leading with the King bestowing a knighthood on Queen guitarist Brian May, of course. I love the headline, King Knights Queen. Very clever. Brian May will become a Sir. And The Times leads on an admission by Sir Chris Whitty that tens of thousands of middle-aged people are dying of heart conditions because they were unable to obtain statins or heart pressure medicine during the pandemic. The Daily Star warns of a very chilly new year as a polar vortex from the North Pole and the US bomb cyclone threaten a big January freeze. Oh joy. The Express reports that more than 700 prisoners, including sex offenders, robbers and drug dealers, have escaped from jail or been released in error during the past decade. And The Telegraph leads on Rishi Sunak bringing back COVID travel restrictions for the first time since February by demanding negative tests from arrivals from China. Well, let's go inside the papers now. And joining us this morning, journalist and political consultant Emma Burnell and broadcaster Claire Muldoon. It's lovely to see both of you in the studio with me. And there's Stephen at home. Claire, shall we start with the COVID tests from China? This is fascinating and actually a little bit controversial.
Well, yes. Now, we need to remember that COVID is endemic. We're no longer in the pandemic stages of this. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of it. And in fact, going as a journalist and thinking, gosh, what would the headline be for 2023? And we often say, bring back lockdown, we'll have a lockdown. There's so much scaremongering in the mainstream media at the moment, but we need to keep hold of the fact that we have run this wave of COVID. We have to have learnt the mistakes that we made during the lockdown, which there's another story coming up that I will cover, that I think is the death of lockdown and what's causing all of these other deaths that are over and above the national average. Now, Is it futile for Rishi Sunak to make these demands in respect to procuring these new COVID tests? No, I don't think it is. I think it's a very good idea that he's doing. He's following in the lines of countries like France, Italy, the States, Spain, India, and in fact Japan are taking it one step further. They're saying if you arrive in Japan from China and you test positive, then they are reintroducing the concept of 7 days of isolation. Now, whilst I don't think that is very good at all for any of us, but reading through the papers today, this morning, you see there was thousands of NHS workers with COVID. There's a twindemic going on now, they're saying. Flu admissions up and COVID admissions are rising as well. So we really need to base these twindemic things on facts and figures, and we cannot allow us to be whirled up, whipped up into a frenzy of frightening, of being feared, of scaremongering. We need to continually live our lives and live them as best as we possibly can. And just a quick one, talking about you and Stephen, about is that the new GBNEWS re-gifting? Is that what happens?
Oh,
you
yes.
catch something and then you give it back to someone,
I think so.
and then you give it back again.
Yes, I think it was unwitting. We didn't know we were doing it. I don't know.
No, but it's very. But I think you're quite right. We've got to be very careful not to panic about all of this. And even for a lot of us are feeling quite poorly at the moment. But if we're in a position where we can just cope with it all, then we should just do that and not panic, I think. Emma, can we have a look at the Express and what they're calling a jail scandal?
Yeah, apparently something like, I think it's 700 prisoners have absconded or from prison vans, I think largely, but also from open prisons. Some of them, convicted of very, very serious violent offences, really quite worrying. I've often argued that we should lock fewer people up, but my God, we should be able to trust that when we do lock them up, they stay there. And this is it's just yet another example of things not working, particularly in our justice system. It seems that at no stage does our justice system seem to work for victims and for the people who are supposed to be protected by it.
I mean, the fact that some were released by mistake. The Express actually tells the story of one who was a rapist who was released, I think, just by mistake, and went out and immediately raped somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're seeing is absolutely nothing has happened in order to make sure that that person is safe to be released. So there hasn't been rehabilitation work, he clearly should not have been released, but he was not ready for society, and society should not have been exposed to him. And that's absolutely an extraordinary scandal.
I agree with everything that you've said, but I think the fundamental issue with this is been the privatisation of prisons and
completely.
the prison service. I don't think there's any accountability. No. There is nothing to say that, there's no checks and balances. It's all out to tender. And I think what you'll find is actually courts, magistrates, everyone and lawyers will be lobbied by these private companies, because if they've got cells full, they're getting paid. And I think that is the issue.
Claire could not be more right, absolutely. And there's no accountability. It's a contract with 1 billion pages of, it's not us, gov, clauses in them. And we just can't run our prisons like that.
I know we have at least one prisons officer watching right now, because he often gets in touch. If you're watching at the moment, why is this happening? How could these things happen? Just get in touch and please tell us. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Claire, let's go back to the after effects of the pandemic, now being blamed for an increase in heart attacks.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, Andrew Budgeon, the MP, stood up with his parliamentary privilege in the House of Commons and was very, very verbose in what he said about the British Heart Foundation, and made allegiance to the fact that there was something wrong with the COVID vaccination and British Heart Foundation were closing down on it. The British Heart Foundation released a very very succinct press release, which I completely believe, obviously. And anyway, but the front page of the Times, pandemic blamed for increase in heart deaths. Now, this, I think, is the real issue with this. And it's the fact that people were frightened to attend GP appointments during the lockdown. They were scaremongered. They were frightened. They didn't know what to do. They couldn't even realise their symptoms themselves. They couldn't work through them. So as a result, we now have have, between the ages of 50 and 64, a tranche of people who are like the living well, the living unwell, shall we say, who have fallen through the cracks, who have not been able to get the statins, high blood pressure medication, and have then fallen into heart failure. Now, heart failure is a very deep, very emotive term, and you think you're going to die. The reality is, and I know from personal experience, that if you have heart failure, it doesn't mean that your heart is failing. It is a very, very pejorative term. You hopefully will be fine with the proper medication and the proper checkups. But that is the death of lockdown that I was alluding to earlier. If we only were able to have a fully functional society in which we felt the need and felt secure enough to actually go for these appointments when we weren't feeling well, then this could have been easily prevented. And it hasn't been. Why not? So if we read the front pages of the papers today, we have to take with a pinch of salt the fact that Rishi Sunak is now testing everybody from China, because we cannot lose sight of the fact that, one, it is an endemic, two, we've ridden the wave of this, and I think, three, a lot of people in this country will not comply with any further lockdowns.
No. I think that's a ship that's sailed, isn't it? Can we have a look, Emma, at the Telegraph? What are police saying about, or what are police being told about paedophiles?
So this is a complicated story, and I want to try and get it right, because I think partly it has been closed down quite quickly by Police Scotland. There is a term, it's been, I wouldn't say popularised, but used by people who might wish to popularise it on social media, which is minor attracted persons. And it seems to be a way of trying to move away from judgment of paedophiles to just saying, hey, it's it's a condition that needs treating. And there are things that can be done to stop those who have that predilection from acting on it, and we should do that because there are victims involved. And the more you can do to stop any child being harmed, the better. But what we cannot do is try to say that pedophilia is a sexual attraction like any other. It is not. It is a perversion. And we must not move into some sort of sense that it's liberal to be okay with people being attracted to children. It is not. And I speak as someone who is a complete libertine. When you are talking about consensual sex, do what you want with who you want. But you cannot consent as a child, and it is abuse, and we must maintain a sense that abuse is wrong in all circumstances. And I think it's really important. But what has happened in this story is that the Police Scotland have been given some funding to quite rightly look at how they can intervene to stop people offending. That's a good thing. The funding came from an organisation that had used this term in their commissioning documents. So Police Scotland didn't use it, but the commissioning organisation did. So I think it's careful not to tar the Police Scotland with this brush, and not to say that they are doing anything wrong in looking at this work. But we do need to move away from this idea that we should normalise this term.
Absolutely, not normalise it. Finally, because we're running out of time, arise Sir Brian May.
Oh, I know. It's wonderful. I think this has been the best honours list, actually, in years. Not only have we got Diamond,
Absolutely.
but, the Lionesses have been acknowledged. Pat Jennings, a Northern Irish footballer, has been acknowledged. Denise Lewis, I think, as well.
Yes.
And David Harewood, an amazing actor for his belief and his help in mental health issues. It's been a tremendous list, and I just think it's wonderful.
It is. I think everybody's thrilled about Sir Brian.
Stephen, when do you think you'll get your on through the door?
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
He's got to come into work.
You can't work from home all the time.
To be fair, I do think there's a bit of poetic justice, because years ago, and we were both saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice to get an honour? Wouldn't it be nice to get an honorary doctorate? And then I got two.
Yes, you did.
I got two.
From Nottingham Trent, no?
Nottingham Trent and University of Bedfordshire.
I think that must be lovely.
Yeah.
That was lovely. So it's about time it was Anne's turn to get.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
like regifting
I
again.
just hope I get invited to the palace or wherever it is done, because you're not told for months probably, at the same day as Brian May.
Oh,
That would be nice,
Yes.
wouldn't it? Yeah.
Meet the Queen with the King.
Meet the Queen with the King, yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, that's quite a day, but yeah, terrific. Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yes, thank you. We'll move on.